Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku missed his first internship. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The scars on his right hand were still pink, a fresh, jagged map of consequences etched into his skin. Izuku Midoriya sat at his desk in Class 1A, his hand unconsciously clenching and unclenching. With every flex, he felt the phantom throb of the surgery recovery girl had overseen. It wasn't pain, exactly, not anymore, but a tightness. A reminder. You are fragile, the scar tissue seemed to whisper. You are a vessel made of glass trying to hold a hurricane. The classroom was buzzing with an electric energy that stood in sharp contrast to Izuku's internal brooding. The sports festival was over. The world had seen them. They had been broadcast to millions, their quirks and spirits laid bare for judgment and adoration. For most of Class 1A, this was a time of triumph. For Izuku, it was a time of terrifying realization. He had broken himself. Again. And again. Standard Hero Informatics period. Aizawa-sensei's voice cut through the chatter, dry and tired as always. He stood at the podium, his bandages finally removed, though a small scar remained under his right eye. Today, we'll be finalizing your code names and sorting through the draft nominations from the pros. The class erupted. Excited noises. Mina Ashido cheered, throwing her hands up. This is the real deal. Kaminari leaned back in his chair, grinning. Wait, did I get any? I totally got some, right? Aizawa pressed a button on the remote, and the holographic board behind him lit up with a bar graph. Usually, the draft creates a more balanced spread. But this year, the attention was concentrated. The graph was lopsided, dominated by two towering pillars, Todoroki and Bakugo. Todoroki gets the most, naturally, Aizawa droned. Bakugo is a close second. The rest of you have varying degrees of interest. Izuku scanned the list, his heart hammering against his ribs. He didn't expect to be at the top. He had lost in the second round, after all. But surely, someone had seen his spirit? Someone had seen the way he fought Todoroki? There it was. Near the bottom, but present, Midoriya Izuku. He let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. He had offers. He wasn't being ignored. But as the excitement of the hero name segment passed, with Midnight's flamboyant approval process and the birth of Deku as a hero name, the reality of the next step began to sink in. They had to choose an internship. A week of field training with a pro hero. Izuku stared at the sheet of paper on his desk, the list of agencies that had requested him. It wasn't a long list, especially compared to Todoroki's, but it was significant. He scanned the names, mumbling under his breath, his finger tracing the ink. Gunhead. Fourth Kind. Uwabami. And then, a name that made him pause. Gran Torino. Izuku blinked. He didn't recognize the name. He pulled out his phone, quickly typing it into the search bar. The results were sparse. An old hero. Retired for years. Unknown quirk specifics. No recent agency activity. Why would a retired hero nominate me? Izuku wondered. Unless, his mind flashed back to the faculty lounge earlier that week, to a fleeting conversation with All Might. The symbol of peace had mentioned an old teacher. Someone terrifying. Someone who had beaten the fear of God into the world's greatest hero. All Might had shivered, visibly shivered, when he spoke of him. He's a strict instructor, All Might had said, looking away, sweat beading on his forehead. Very strict. I can barely look at Taiyaki without flinching. Izuku looked down at his hand again. The scars. The tightness. If he went to this Gran Torino, whoever he was, he would likely be put through a grinder. All Might's training was already brutal, based on the American Dream plan. If Gran Torino was the man who taught All Might, then his methods would be even more archaic, even more intense. Can my body take that right now? The doubt was a cold stone in his gut. During the sports festival, he had relied on adrenaline and hysteria. He had shattered his fingers to flick air. He had broken his arm to land a punch. I don't need to learn how to endure pain, Izuku thought, his brow furrowing. I know how to endure pain. I know how to break. What I don't know is how not to. He needed control. But more than that, he needed a foundation. He felt like he was trying to fire a cannon from a canoe. He needed to turn the canoe into a battleship. He needed muscle. He needed structure. He needed to understand how a body with super strength was supposed to move before the power was applied. His eyes drifted down the list to another name, Death Arms, the strength hero. Izuku knew him well. He was one of the heroes present at the sludge villain incident, the day Izuku had rushed in to save Bakugo. Death Arms was a pure power type. His quirk was simple, incredible physical strength packed into his arms. He lifted girders, stopped trucks, and punched through debris. He didn't have a stockpiling quirk like One for All. He just had raw, static strength. Death Arms doesn't break his bones when he punches, Izuku analyzed, the muttering starting to spill out, though low enough that only Uraraka glanced at him. He has a physique that supports his power output. He knows the mechanics of lifting, of striking, of leverage. If I go to him, I won't be learning how to use One for All specifically, but I might learn how to build the vessel All Might keeps talking about. A safer way. A practical way. Midoriya-chan? Ajui's voice broke his trance. You're muttering again. It's creepy. Ah. Sorry, Ajui-san. Izuku jolted, covering his mouth. Call me Tsuyu. Right, Tsuyu-chan. Izuku looked back at his paper. Gran Torino. The unknown master who terrified All Might. Death Arms. The stable, reliable powerhouse who operated in the heart of Tokyo. Izuku imagined going to Gran Torino. He imagined more training montages, more breaking, more cryptic advice that led to him waking up in Recovery Girl's office. He imagined disappointing All Might by failing to survive the old man's training. Then he imagined Death Arms. Lifting weights. Patrolling the streets. Learning how to be a hero who didn't destroy himself. I can't afford to be out of commission again, Izuku decided, a sudden resolve hardening his features. I need to be safe. I need to be consistent. I can't save anyone if I'm always in a cast. He picked up his pen. He hovered over Gran Torino's name for a fraction of a second, a butterfly flapping its wings, and then moved down. He circled Death Arms. Later that afternoon, the sun was casting long, orange shadows across the UA hallways. The school was emptying out, but the weight of the upcoming internships hung in the air. Izuku stood in the doorway of the teacher's lounge. He had asked to speak with All Might. Young Midoriya. All Might, in his deflated, skeletal form, coughed into a handkerchief as he turned from his desk. Come in, come in. Have you decided on your internship? Izuku stepped inside, clutching his submission form. Yes, All Might. I wanted to tell you before I turned it in. All Might's eyes twinkled with a knowing light. He had seen the list. He knew Gran Torino had put in a request. In truth, All Might had been dreading this conversation, assuming he would have to explain who the old man was and effectively sentence his successor to a week of hell. But he also knew it was necessary. Gran Torino was the only one who knew the truth of One for All. Oh? All Might smiled. Did a certain, veteran hero catch your eye? Izuku took a deep breath. Actually, I decided not to accept that offer. The room went silent. The clock on the wall ticked loudly. All Might blinked, his blue eyes widening in genuine surprise. You didn't? No, Izuku said, his voice trembling slightly but his gaze steady. I looked up Gran Torino. You said he was your teacher, and that he was terrifying. All Might. I'm barely holding together right now. If I go somewhere where the training is too intense, or where I'm pushed to break my limits again immediately, I don't think my arms can take it. He raised his scarred hand. Recovery Girl said I can't keep doing this. If I break them again, I might lose function. I need to learn how to use my body safely. I need to build muscle and learn mechanics from someone who relies on pure strength, but does it without injury. All Might stared at the boy. He saw the logic. It was sound, rational logic. It was the logic of a boy who was terrified of his own power. A boy who was desperately trying to be responsible. So, All Might whispered, who did you choose? Death Arms, Izuku said. His agency is in Tokyo. He handles heavy disasters and construction accidents. It's physical labor and combat training. I think, I think that's what I need right now. Stability. All Might felt a pang of conflict. On one hand, Gran Torino was exactly what Izuku needed to unlock the mental block regarding One for All. Gran Torino could teach him that the quirk wasn't a special weapon to be summoned, but a part of his whole being. But on the other hand, All Might remembered the cane. He remembered the grueling sparring. He remembered vomiting from exhaustion. He's just a boy, All Might thought, looking at Izuku's anxious face. A boy who has already broken his bones half a dozen times in 2 months. Maybe he's right. Maybe sending him to Torino now, when his confidence is so fragile, would break him completely. Toshinori Yagi was a hero, but he was a soft-hearted mentor. He couldn't bring himself to force the boy into the lion's den, not when Izuku was looking at him with such earnest pleading for validation. I see, All Might said, forcing a smile onto his gaunt face. He placed a large hand on Izuku's shoulder. That is a very mature decision, young Midoriya. Recognizing your limits is a key part of being a hero. Death Arms is a respectable pro. He has good fundamentals. Perhaps building your vessel further is the right call for now. Izuku beamed, the relief washing over him like a tidal wave. Thank you, All Might. I promise I'll work hard. I know you will, All Might said. Just be careful. Tokyo is a big city. I will. As Izuku turned and ran out of the room, eager to submit his form, All Might sank back into his chair. He looked at the phone on his desk. He would have to call Gran Torino. He's going to yell at me, All Might thought miserably. He's going to kick me in the face the next time he sees me. But as he watched Izuku's retreating back, he convinced himself it was for the best. Let the boy have a normal internship, he thought. Let him learn the ropes without the weight of the world on his shoulders for just 1 week. He didn't know it then, but that silence, that decision to protect Izuku from the harshness of Gran Torino, was the first domino to fall. The week leading up to the internships was a blur of costume adjustments and travel preparations. The atmosphere in Class 1A was a mix of competitive tension and vacation excitement. For Tenya Ida, however, there was no excitement. There was only a cold, hollow furnace burning in his chest. Izuku had noticed it, of course. It was hard not to. Ida, usually the loud, boisterous engine of the class, had become quiet. He spoke only when necessary. His hand chops were less vigorous, his glasses constantly reflecting the light in a way that hid his eyes. The news of Ingenium, Ida's brother, Tensei, had shaken the class. Defeated by the hero killer, Stain. Alive, but retired. Crippled, Izuku sat in the locker room, lacing up his boots. He looked across the benches at Ida. The taller boy was staring into his open locker, his body rigid. Ida-kun? Izuku asked softly. Ida didn't flinch. Yes, Midoriya-kun? Are you sure you're okay? About the internship? Izuku probed gently. You chose an agency in Hosa City. Manuel's agency, right? That's where it happened. Ida closed his locker with a metallic clang. He turned, adjusting his glasses. The smile he gave Izuku was perfect. Too perfect. It didn't reach his eyes. It is the best place for me to learn, Ida said, his voice steady. Manuel is a disciplined hero. And being in Hosa will allow me to feel closer to my brother's struggle, to understand what it means to be a hero in a city that is hurting. But Izuku hesitated. The hero killer hasn't been caught yet. If he's still there, the police and pros are handling it, Ida cut him off. I am a student, Midoriya. I am going there to learn, not to hunt villains. It was a lie. Izuku felt it in his gut. The hair on the back of his neck stood up. He remembered the look on Ida's face during the funeral service he hadn't attended but had heard about. I should say something more, Izuku thought. I should tell All Might. Or Aizawa-sensei. I should tell him to stop. But then doubt crept in. Who am I to tell him how to grieve? Izuku thought. Ida is the class representative. He's the most responsible one of us. If he says he's going to learn, he's going to learn. I'm just projecting my own worries. I chose the safe option with Death Arms. I shouldn't judge Ida for facing his trauma head-on. Okay, Izuku said, swallowing the lump in his throat. Just be safe, Ida-kun. If you need anything, I will be fine, Ida said, picking up his bag. Focus on your own training, Midoriya. You have much to catch up on, do you not? The comment stung slightly, but it was true. Izuku nodded. Right. The day of departure arrived under a canopy of gray, drizzling clouds. The platform at the train station was crowded with commuters, but the group of UA students stood out in their uniforms, carrying large cases containing their hero costumes. Aizawa stood before them, looking as if he would rather be asleep in his sleeping bag. You all have your costumes. You have your passes, Aizawa grumbled. Remember, you are representing UA. Don't cause trouble. Listen to your mentors. If I hear about any of you acting like children, you'll be expelled when you get back. Understood? Yes, sir. The class chorused. The group began to fracture as different trains arrived. Man, I'm so pumped. Kirishima grinned, slapping Tetsu, who had coincidentally been at the same station, on the back. Fourth kind is gonna toughen us up. I'll be patrolling the fashion districts with best jeanists, Bakugo scowled, looking like he was marching to an execution rather than an internship. I'm going to show that denim freak who's boss. Good luck, Kaken, Izuku squeaked. Shut up, DKU. Don't tell me what to do. Bakugo barked, marching onto his train. Uraraka approached Izuku, her bag slung over her shoulder. She looked nervous but determined. Well, this is it, Deku-kun. 1 week. Yeah, Izuku smiled nervously. Gunhead, right? That's really different for you, Uraraka-san. I need to learn how to fight, she said, pumping a fist. I rely too much on my quirk. After watching you and Bakugo, I realized I need to be stronger. Physically. That's exactly what I thought, Izuku said, feeling a surge of camaraderie. That's why I picked Death Arms. We're kind of on the same path, huh? Uraraka beamed. Yeah. Let's do our best, okay? And let's tell each other everything when we get back. Definitely. The announcement for the southbound train to Hosu chimed over the speakers. Izuku turned. Ida was standing a few feet away, his back to the group. He was staring at the electronic board, his posture stiff as a board. Ida-kun! Uraraka called out. Ida turned slowly. His expression was unreadable. My train is here. Good luck! Uraraka cheered. Yeah, Izuku stepped forward. Ida, seriously. Call us. We have the group chat. Ida looked at Izuku. For a second, just a split second, the mask slipped. Izuku saw raw, unadulterated rage and sorrow swirling in those eyes behind the rectangular lenses. It was a look of someone walking into a fire hoping to burn. Midoriya, Ida said, his voice low. You represent the future of heroism. Do not waste your time. It was a strange thing to say. Before Izuku could process it, Ida turned on his heel and marched onto the train. The doors slid shut, sealing him inside. As the train pulled away, Izuku saw Ida sitting by the window, not looking back, his gaze fixed on the horizon where Hosu waited. He's really intense, Uraraka murmured, her smile fading. Yeah, Izuku whispered. The bad feeling in his stomach was back, heavier than before. He is. He'll be okay, Uraraka reassured him, though she sounded like she was trying to convince herself too. He's Ida. He follows the rules better than anyone. Attention, the intercom blared. Train for Tokyo, Shinjuku Station, arriving on track 4. That's me, Izuku said, shaking his head to clear the dark thoughts. He had to focus. He had chosen the safe path. He had chosen to build himself up. He couldn't worry about Ida right now. Ida was with a pro. Manuel was a responsible hero. Nothing bad would happen. Go get him, Deku. Uraraka waved. You too, Uraraka-san. Izuku boarded his train. He found a seat, stowed his costume case overhead, and sat down. As the train began to move, accelerating smoothly out of the station, he watched the city blur past. He pulled out his notebook, Hero Analysis for the Future, Volume 14. He opened it to a fresh page and wrote Death Arms at the top. Goal for the week. 1. Build core strength. 2. Learn punching mechanics to reduce recoil. 3. Observe crowd control techniques. 4. Do not break bones. He underlined the last one 3 times. He was doing the smart thing. He was doing the logical thing. He was avoiding the cryptic, dangerous training of an unknown old man in favor of practical, modern hero work. As the train sped toward Tokyo, carrying him further and further away from Hosa's city, Izuku Midoriya closed his eyes and tried to relax. He had no idea that he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. The Death Arms Agency was exactly what Izuku expected, which was both comforting and slightly underwhelming. Located in a bustling district of Tokyo, the office was part of a larger complex that included a massive gym and a garage for heavy machinery. The logo, a fist gripping a barbell, was plastered everywhere. When Izuku walked in, the smell of sweat, chalk, and protein powder hit him instantly. Midoriya! Welcome! Death Arms was a towering figure. He wore his hero costume, a simple, sleeveless shirt that showed off his massive biceps, striped caution tape wristbands, and a construction-themed headband. He looked like a man who could wrestle a bulldozer and win. Death Arms, sir! It's an honor to be here. Izuku bowed deeply, his bag slipping off his shoulder. At ease, kid, at ease. Death Arms laughed, his voice booming. He slapped Izuku on the back with enough force to nearly send him sprawling. I gotta say, I was surprised to see your name on my list. You made quite a splash at the festival. Breaking your fingers like that, crazy stuff. But you've got guts. I like guts. Thank you, sir, Izuku wheezed, straightening up. I actually chose your agency because of that. I want to stop breaking my fingers. I want to learn how to use strength without the backlash. Death Arms nodded, crossing his massive arms. Smart. Longevity is the key to this game. You can't save anyone if you're in the ICU. Come on, let me show you around. The tour was brief. The agency was focused on two things: disaster response and physical apprehension. We get a lot of calls for collapsing buildings, car crashes, and villains who decide to throw buses around, Death Arms explained as they walked through the training area. Several sidekicks were lifting weights that looked like they belonged on a crane. The key isn't just being strong. It's about stability. Anchoring yourself? Anchoring, Izuku repeated, pulling out his notebook and scribbling furiously. Right. Center of gravity. Exactly. Now, put your stuff in the locker room. We don't waste time here. Shift starts in 10 minutes. Izuku scrambled to change. When he emerged in his green hero costume, with the new support braces on his legs, though he hadn't figured out how to use them effectively yet, he felt a surge of anticipation. This is it, he thought. The training begins. All right, Midoriya. Death Arms shouted from across the gym. Let's see what you've got. Without the quirk. I want to see your baseline. For the next 4 hours, Izuku realized that baseline for Death Arms meant torture for anyone else. They moved giant tires. They pulled sleds loaded with concrete blocks. They did pull-ups until Izuku's arms felt like jelly. It was grueling. It was exhausting. But as the sun began to set on the first day, a nagging thought crept into Izuku's mind. This is just exercise. He was lifting weights. He was doing cardio. He was doing exactly what he had done on the beach with all might for 10 months. Good hustle, kid, Death Arms said, wiping sweat from his brow with a towel. You've got a good foundation. All Might taught you well. Thank you, Izuku panted, clutching his knees. Death Arms, sir? Yeah? When do we? I mean, do you have any advice on how to regulate the output? Izuku asked tentatively. Like when you punch, how do you keep from using too much power? Death Arms blinked. He looked at his own fist, then flexed it. Regulate? I dunno, kid. You just push. You grit your teeth and you push until the job is done. My quirk makes me strong. I don't have a dial. I'm just strong. Izuku's heart sank. But if I use 100%, I'd break, Izuku explained desperately. I need to learn how to use less. Or how to handle the 100% better. Death Arms scratched his chin. Well, if he gets stronger muscles, the bones won't break as easy. That's the logic, right? Just keep lifting. You'll grow into it. Just keep lifting. It was the same advice he had given himself. It wasn't wrong, technically. But it wasn't the breakthrough he needed. He wasn't learning a technique. He wasn't learning a new way to visualize his power. He was just adding layers of brick to a crumbling foundation. Right, Izuku said, his voice small. Just keep lifting. By the third day, the routine had set in. Morning workout. Patrol. Lunch. Afternoon workout. Patrol. The patrols were uneventful. They walked through construction zones, waved at fans, and helped move a stalled truck off an intersection. It was good work. Honest work. Hero work. But Izuku felt stagnant. He checked his phone during his lunch break on Wednesday. The class group chat was active. Kirishima, man. Fourth kind hit me with a ruler because I didn't bow fast enough. This is hardcore. Ashido, the waiting room at this agency is so boring but the hero is super cool. Uraraka, Gunhead Sensei taught me how to throw a knife today. Only a rubber one, but still. He says I have killer instinct. 3. Izuku stared at the screen. Uraraka was learning martial arts. Kirishima was learning discipline. Midoriya, I moved a lot of cement bags today. He typed it, then deleted it. It sounded pathetic. He scrolled up. There were no messages from Ida. Midoriya, has anyone heard from Ida? Todoroki, no. He hasn't read my messages. Uraraka, maybe the signal is bad in Hosu? Or manual is really strict? Izuku frowned. He opened the news app. HOSU City quiet amidst hero killer rumors. The headline did nothing to settle his nerves. He felt a phantom itch on his skin. He wanted to call Ida. He dialed the number. It rang. And rang. And rang. Voicemail, Izuku sighed. Midoriya! Break's over. Death Arms shouted. We got a call about a villain with a gigantification quirk downtown. Might need some muscle to hold him down. Coming, sir. Izuku jumped up. He shoved his phone into his pocket. He told himself Ida was fine. He told himself that he was doing important work here in Tokyo. I'm building my vessel, he repeated the mantra. I'm playing it safe so I can be the greatest hero later. As he ran to catch up with Death Arms, the sky outside began to darken. Heavy clouds were rolling in from the west, moving toward the coast. Toward Hosu. Tonight, it was going to rain. That evening, the Death Arms agency was quiet. Most of the sidekicks had gone home. Izuku was staying in the dorms attached to the office. He was in the common room, doing stretches on the floor while the news played softly on the television in the corner. He felt stronger, physically. His muscles were tight and sore in a satisfying way, but his quirk, One for All, still felt like a volatile bomb inside him. He hadn't made a single step toward controlling it. Maybe I should have gone to Gran Torino, the thought finally surfaced, unbidden and sharp. Maybe the fear was necessary. Maybe I need to be broken to be fixed. Breaking news, the news anchor's voice changed pitch, becoming urgent. We are receiving reports of explosions in Hosu City. Izuku froze mid-stretch. He scrambled to his feet and turned up the volume. The screen showed shaky helicopter footage. Smoke was rising from several buildings in Hosu. Sirens wailed in the background. Eyewitnesses report strange creatures attacking the city center, the reporter said, her voice rising in panic. They appear to be similar to the villain that attacked Yue High School. Nomu? Izuku gasped. In Hosu? His blood ran cold. Hosu. That was where Ida was. The League of Villains is suspected to be involved. Pro-heroes in the area are engaging, but the damage is spreading rapidly. Izuku grabbed his phone. He dialed Ida again. Ring. 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 Pick up, Izuku pleaded, gripping the phone so hard the plastic creaked. Pick up, pick up, pick up. Click. You have reached the voicemail of, damn it! Izuku shouted. He looked around the empty agency. Death Arms had gone out for a drink with some other local heroes. Izuku was alone. He was in Tokyo. Hosu was a bullet train ride away. Even if he left now, it would take over an hour to get there. I can't do anything, Izuku realized, the horror dawning on him. I'm too far away. In the timeline that could have been, Izuku Midoriya was in Hosu. He was on a train with Gran Torino when the Nomu attacked. He would have sensed the danger. He would have realized Ida wasn't answering because Ida had found staying. He would have rushed into the alleyway. He would have sent a location ping to Todoroki. But Izuku Midoriya was not in Hosu. He was in the safer internship. He stared at the TV screen as the camera zoomed in on a blue flame erupting in the distance. Endeavor was there. The pros were fighting. Ida is looking for Stain, Izuku thought, his mind racing. He's not fighting the Noma. He went there for revenge. If the chaos is starting, he's going to use it as cover. He's going to go after him. Think. Izuku paced the room. Who is in Hosu? Manuel. Native. Endeavor. Gran Torino might be there if he was patrolling nearby. Wait. No, Gran Torino operates out of Kofu mostly. He wouldn't be in Hosu unless he had a student with him. But he didn't. Because Izuku had said no. A terrible, suffocating silence settled over Izuku. He checked the group chat. Midoriya, guys. Turn on the news. HOSU is under attack. Todoroki, I'm here. Izuku's heart leaped. Midoriya, Todoroki-kun. You're in Hosu? Todoroki, yes. With my father. We are engaging the creatures. Midoriya, Ida. Have you seen Ida? Todoroki, no. We just arrived. It's chaos. Midoriya, he's after the hero killer. You have to find him. I think he's in the alleyways away from the main fight. That's where Stain operates. There was a pause. A long, agonizing pause. Todoroki, I can't leave my father's side right now. We are surrounded by these things. I will keep an eye out. Izuku stared at the phone. In the other timeline, Izuku's mass message of just his location, a cry for help, was enough to pull Todoroki away because Todoroki trusted Izuku's instincts implicitly. But this was a text message speculating about Ida's location. It wasn't a distress beacon. It was a theory, and Todoroki, currently blasting ice at a multi-eyed monster, couldn't abandon the civilians he was protecting based on a hunch from a classmate in Tokyo. No, Izuku whispered. He sank to his knees in the middle of the Death Arms agency. He was safe. His bones were whole. His muscles were uninjured. But for the first time in his life, being whole felt like the worst possible fate. Outside the window, the rain began to fall in Tokyo, a gentle drizzle that mirrored the storm raging in Hosu. Miles away, in a dark, dead-end alley, Tenya Ida lay on the wet pavement. His sword was shattered. His helmet was knocked aside. He couldn't feel his legs. The hero killer Stain stood over him, blade gleaming in the moonlight. There was no green lightning sparking at the entrance of the alley. There was no smash. There was no boy shouting that meddling where you don't belong is the essence of a hero. There was only the sound of rain, and the judgment of a killer. You are weak, Stain rasped, raising his sword. Because you are fake. And in Tokyo, Izuku Midoriya screamed in frustration, a sound that no one was around to hear. The alarm on Izuku Midoriya's phone chirped at 5:30 a.m., slicing through the unfamiliar silence of the guest room at the Death Arms agency. Izuku woke instantly. There was no grogginess, no hitting the snooze button. His eyes snapped open, staring at the white ceiling tiles of the agency dormitory. For a split second, the disorientation of waking up in a strange bed held him, but then the reality of his situation crashed down. He was in Tokyo. He was an intern. He sat up, his joints popping. His body felt heavy, a dull ache radiating through his trapezius and lower back. It wasn't the sharp, screaming pain of a broken bone, a sensation he had become intimately, terrifyingly familiar with over the last few months, but the deep, thrumming fatigue of labor. Day 2. Izuku swung his legs out of bed and looked at his hands. They were trembling slightly, not from nerve damage, but from the sheer volume of gripping and lifting he had done the previous day. Building the vessel, he whispered to himself, flexing his fingers. The scar tissue on his right hand pulled tight, a white web against his skin. I'm building the vessel. He repeated the mantra like a prayer. He had to believe it. He had walked away from All Might's teacher, from the man who had trained the symbol of peace, to be here. He had chosen the path of safety, of structure, of physical reinforcement. If he wasn't building the vessel, then what was he doing? He stood up, dressed quickly in his gym clothes, and headed for the main training hall. The agency was quiet, the early morning light filtering through the high windows of the converted warehouse that served as Death Arms gym. The smell of stale sweat, chalk dust, and industrial cleaner hung in the air. Izuku began his warm-up. Jumping jacks. High knees. Shadowboxing. Whoosh. Whoosh. He threw punches at the air. His form was good, All Might had drilled the basics into him, but there was a hesitation at the end of every strike. A subconscious flinch. His brain was wiring itself to expect the snap of bone, the explosion of pain that accompanied the use of one for all. He tried to summon the feeling of the quirk. That hot, electric river that flowed from his core. He let it trickle into his arm, trying to stop it, trying to cap the bottle before it exploded. 5%? No, that's too much. 1%? He felt the power surge. His veins glowed red for a microsecond. Stop! He yanked his arm back, dissipating the energy before he threw the punch. He stood panting in the empty gym, clutching his wrist. He still couldn't do it. It was binary. On or off. 0 or 100. You're up early, kid. Izuku jumped, spinning around. Death Arms stood in the doorway, holding a massive protein shaker. He was wearing a tank top that read lift heavy, live heavy, and his arms looked like tree trunks that had been grafted onto a human torso. Good morning, Death Arms, sir. Izuku bowed reflexively. Relax with the bowing, Death Arms chuckled, walking over to a rack of dumbbells. He picked up a 50-kilogram weight as if it were a paperweight. I like the enthusiasm. Most interns spend the first morning crying about how sore they are. I'm used to soreness, sir, Izuku said. I trained for 10 months to get into UA. That beach cleanup, right? All Might told me. Death Arms nodded approvingly. Good stuff. Functional strength. That's what we do here. None of that flashy emitter nonsense where you shoot lasers from your eyes but can't open a jar of pickles. He set the weight down with a clang. So, Death Arms said, leaning against the squat rack. Ready for today? We've got a request from the sanitation department. A villain with a terraforming quirk messed up a mesmerizing amount of sewage piping in District 4. They need heavy lifters to move the concrete slabs so the technicians can get in. Izuku blinked. Sewage piping? Heroism isn't all capes and cheering crowds, Midoriya, Death Arms said, his face serious. Sometimes it's moving heavy rocks so people can flush their toilets. That's the job. Right. Yes, sir. Izuku straightened up. I'm ready. Good. Eat some breakfast. We move out in 30. The reality of the internship was, in a word, grinding. By noon, Izuku was covered in gray dust and smelled faintly of sulfur. The construction site in District 4 was a disaster zone. The villain, some low-level thug calling himself the Badger, had tunneled through the street, collapsing a main intersection and shattering the underground infrastructure. Izuku's job was simple. There were massive chunks of asphalt and concrete that the cranes couldn't reach safely without risking further collapse. Hey, Greenie! One of the sidekicks, a man with oversized hands named Grip, shouted. We need that slab moved to the dumpster. Put your back into it. Yes, sir. Izuku jogged over to the slab. It was roughly the size of a refrigerator. Okay, Izuku thought. Mechanics. Lift with the legs. Keep the back straight. Core tight. He squatted down, gripping the rough edges of the concrete. He didn't use one for all. He couldn't risk accidentally smashing the slab into dust and causing a cave-in. He had to use his own, natural strength. He grunted, his muscles screaming as he heaved the slab up. His legs shook. The weight was immense, pressing down on his spine, testing the limits of the body he had built over the last year. Up. He waddled toward the designated pile, sweat stinging his eyes. He dropped the slab with a heavy thud. Nice form, Grip commented, passing by with a wheelbarrow. You got good torque for a small guy. Thanks, Izuku wheezed, wiping his forehead. He looked around. Death Arms was on the other side of the pit, holding up a collapsing wall with one shoulder while construction workers hurriedly welded a support beam. The pro hero looked effortless, his face calm, his breathing steady. Izuku watched him, analyzing. He's not just strong, Izuku muttered, pulling a small, dust-covered notebook from his utility belt. He's efficient. He's locking his joints to support the weight, transferring the load directly into the ground through his heels. He's making himself into a pillar. He scribbled, Death Arms technique, static load bearing. Minimize muscular exertion by utilizing skeletal alignment. It was useful. It was practical. But as Izuku pocketed the notebook and went to lift another rock, the doubt gnawed at him. Does this help me with one for all? One for all wasn't a static load. It was a jet engine. Learning how to be a pillar was great if you wanted to hold a building up, but Izuku needed to learn how to move. He needed to learn how to flow. He felt like he was learning how to drive a tractor when he had a Formula 1 engine strapped to his back. Midoriya! Death Arms called out. Break time! And we've got visitors! Izuku looked up to see a small crowd gathered at the police barricade. Fans. This was the other part of the Death Arms experience, public relations. Death Arms was a popular hero in this district, known for being accessible and friendly. Izuku walked over, dusting himself off. As soon as he approached the tape, a few high school girls squealed. It's him! The boy from the sports festival, the one who broke his fingers. You were so cool! Scary, but cool. Izuku froze, his face flushing a deep red. Thank you. Can we get a picture? Sure! Death Arms boomed, slinging an arm around Izuku's neck and pulling him into a headlock for the camera. Smile, kid! You're a hero! Izuku forced a smile. Cheese. Hey, a young boy, maybe 7 years old, tugged on Izuku's costume. He was holding an All Might action figure. Izuku looked down, his expression softening. Hi there. Are you gonna be like All Might? The boy asked, his eyes wide. You have a super punch like him, right? The question felt like a punch to the gut. Izuku stammered. He looked at his hand, currently covered in grime and trembling from fatigue. I'm trying really hard. Show us. The boy cheered. Punch something. Punch that rock. He pointed to a piece of debris. Yeah, show us the power. The crowd encouraged. Izuku stepped back, his heart racing. I can't. Not right now. It's dangerous. The crowd groaned. Death Arms stepped in, ruffling the boy's hair. Hey now, heroes don't use their quirks for showing off. We save it for the villains, right Midoriya? Alright, Izuku said, grateful for the save. But as they walked away from the crowd to eat their boxed lunches, the feeling of fraudulence washed over him. They wanted to see the power. They wanted to see the successor, even if they didn't know he was the successor. But he couldn't show them anything without destroying himself. He was a hero who couldn't use his quirk. He was a Ferrari that could only be pushed in neutral. Lunch was eaten on the back of a flatbed truck. Death Arms, Grip, and another sidekick named Heavyset, who had a density-shifting quirk, were tearing into beef bowls. So, Midoriya, Heavyset said between mouthfuls of rice. You catch the news this morning? About Hosu? Izuku perked up instantly. Hosu? What about it? Just rumors, Grip said, waving his chopsticks. People saying the hero killer is still lurking around there. Ingenium got taken out there just a few days ago, right? Scary stuff. Ingenium was a good man, Death Arms said solemnly. Fast. Smart. If Stain got him, well, it means nobody is safe. Izuku stared at his food. Do you think he's still there? In Hosu? Villains like that usually move on, Death Arms shrugged. But Stain is different. He's got an ideology. He thinks he's cleansing the city. If he thinks Hosu still has fake heroes, he might stick around. Fake heroes. The words echoed in Izuku's mind. Stain targeted heroes who were in it for the fame, or the money. Heroes who lacked the true spirit of self-sacrifice. Izuku looked at Death Arms. The man was currently checking his phone, liking comments on the photo they had just posted to his agency's Instagram. Is Death Arms a fake hero? Izuku wondered. No. He works hard. He protects people. But Stain might think so. Stain might see the PR, the branding, and judge him. And what about Ida? Ida had gone to Hosu. Ida, who was usually the embodiment of rules and order, had looked like a man possessed at the train station. Excuse me, Izuku said, standing up abruptly. I need to use the restroom. He hurried away from the truck, ducking behind a stack of pipes. He pulled out his phone. No new messages. He opened the group chat. Midoriya, hey everyone. How is day 2 going? Kaminari disaster. I short-circuited a toaster, and my mentor made me pay for it. Jiro, Death Mountain handles hostage negotiation training today. It's intense. Ajui, patrolling the harbor. It's peaceful. Ribbit, Izuku scrolled. Nothing from Ida. He tapped on Ida's contact. He hesitated, his thumb hovering over the call button. If I call him, what do I say? Hey, are you hunting a serial killer? If I'm wrong, I'll insult him. If I'm right, what can I do from here? He didn't call. He put the phone away. Midoriya! Back to work. Coming. The sun set, and the workday ended. The physical exhaustion was total. Izuku's arms felt like lead weights. Back at the agency, after a communal dinner that involved way too much protein powder, Izuku found himself alone in the gym again. He couldn't sleep. The anxiety was a buzzing noise in his ears. He walked over to the punching bag. It was a heavy-duty one, reinforced for strength quirks. Okay, Izuku whispered. Advice from Death Arms. Just grit your teeth. Just push. He took a stance. He wound back his right arm. I need to use the quirk. I can't just lift weights forever. He focused. He brought out one for all. He felt the egg in the microwave. He visualized the heat spreading. Don't explode. Just leak. Smash. He threw the punch. At the last second, fear spiked. He remembered the crunch of his arm against Todoroki's ice. He flinched. He pulled the power back. His fist hit the bag with a dull thud. It was a normal punch. Maybe a little stronger than average, but nothing supernatural. Damn it! Izuku yelled, kicking the ground. He was going in circles. The fear of injury was creating a mental block. He couldn't use a little bit of power because he was terrified of using too much. And because he couldn't use a little, he had no control, which meant he would only ever use too much. It was a self-fulfilling prophecy of failure. He slid down to the floor, leaning his back against the punching bag. He buried his face in his hands. I'm wasting my time, he whispered. I'm wasting All Might's time. He pulled out his phone again. He needed to talk to someone. Anyone. He scrolled past All Might's number. He couldn't call him. He couldn't tell All Might, I made a mistake. I should have gone to Gran Torino. That would be admitting defeat. That would be admitting he was too weak to figure this out on his own. He tapped on Uraraka's name. The phone rang twice. Hello? Deku-kun? Her voice was breathless, energetic. Uraraka-san, Izuku said, forcing his voice to sound steady. Hey. Sorry to call so late. I just wanted to see how it was going. It's amazing! Uraraka practically shouted. Oh my gosh, Deku, I can't feel my legs, but it's amazing. Gunhead-sensei is so cool. He looks scary, but he's actually really cute and nice. Izuku managed a weak smile. That's great. What are you doing? Martial arts, she said. We've been doing grappling drills all day. He says that because I can make things weightless, I don't need to rely on striking. I can use the opponent's momentum against them. If I touch them, they float, and then I can just, whoosh, pin them down. That makes sense, Izuku said, his analyzer brain waking up slightly. Removing friction in gravity means their center of mass is irrelevant. You can control the battlefield. Exactly. And today, I learned how to deal with someone holding a knife. It was so scary at first, but then Gunhead-sensei showed me the pivot points. It's all about technique, Deku-kun. Even if I'm not strong, if I use the right leverage, I can win. Technique, Izuku repeated. The word tasted bitter. Yeah. How about you? Uraraka asked. You're with Death Arms, right? Did you learn some super cool super strength moves? Did you smash any villains? Izuku looked at his trembling hand. I moved some rocks, he said quietly. Oh, Uraraka said. That's helpful. Building muscle, right? Yeah. Building muscle. Izuku looked around the empty gym. But Death Arms doesn't really have technique, Uraraka-san. He just has power. He told me the secret is to just grit my teeth. There was a pause on the line. Uraraka, despite her bubbly nature, was sharp. She heard the hollow tone in his voice. Deku-kun, are you okay? Izuku let out a shaky breath. I feel like I'm stuck. Everyone is moving forward. You're learning a whole new fighting style. Ida is doing something. And I'm just doing manual labor. I haven't learned how to control my quirk at all. I'm still at 0. You're not at 0, Uraraka said firmly. You're smart, Deku-kun. Maybe you're just looking at it wrong. Maybe you're not supposed to learn his way. Maybe you're supposed to watch him and learn what not to do. Maybe. Izuku sighed. I don't know. I just feel like I made the safe choice, and the safe choice was the wrong one. It's only been 2 days, Uraraka soothed. You still have time. And hey, getting stronger isn't a waste. If your body is stronger, maybe the quirk won't hurt as much next time? Yeah. That's the hope. Don't give up. You're the one who told me to do my best in the sports festival. So you have to do your best too. Even if it's just moving rocks, move them better than anyone else. Izuku smiled. It was a genuine smile this time. Uraraka always knew how to simplify things. You're right. Thanks, Uraraka-san. I needed to hear that. Anytime. Now get some sleep. Gahead says rest is part of training. Good night. He hung up. The silence returned, but it felt a little less oppressive. She's right, Izuku thought. I can't change my internship now. I'm here. I have to make the most of it. If Death Arms can't teach me control, I have to figure it out myself. I have to observe. He stood up and walked to the mirror on the wall. He looked at his reflection. He didn't see a hero. He saw a tired kid in a gym suit. I need a breakthrough, he thought. And I'm not going to find it lifting concrete. Day 4. The weather in Tokyo had turned gray. The air was heavy with humidity, a precursor to the storm system moving up the coast. The atmosphere in the agency was different today. The light-hearted banter was dialed back. The news reports were getting more frequent. Sightings of the hero killer in Hosu have increased, the radio in the transport truck announced. Police are advising citizens to avoid alleyways at night. Izuku sat in the back of the truck, sandwiched between grip and a pile of traffic cones. He was staring at his phone again. He had texted Ida that morning. Ida-kun, please just text me back so I know you're safe. No reply. Hey kid, Death Arms said from the driver's seat. He looked in the rearview mirror. You look like you're gonna be sick. What's eating you? I have a friend in Hosu, Izuku admitted. Interning with Manuel. I haven't heard from him. Manuel's a pro, Death Arms said reassuringly. He runs a tight ship. Your friend is probably just busy filing paperwork. Manuel loves paperwork. The sidekicks chuckled. Yeah, Izuku said. Probably. But the knot in his stomach was tightening. They spent the afternoon doing crowd control for a large protest downtown. It was boring, tense work. Izuku stood behind a barricade, watching people shout. He felt useless. Is this what being a hero is? He wondered. Standing around? Waiting? He thought of Gran Torino again. What would the old man be doing? Probably sleeping, Izuku thought with a grim smirk. Or eating taiyaki. But then he remembered All Might's descriptions. Gran Torino was fast. Gran Torino was efficient. If I were with him, would I be learning how to move? He shook his head. Stop looking back. Look forward. As evening approached, the clouds darkened to a charcoal bruise. The wind picked up, whipping trash through the streets of Tokyo. All right, pack it in. Death Arms shouted. Storm's coming. We need to secure the construction sites before the wind knocks anything over. The drive back to the agency was somber. The rain began to fall, slow fat drops that splattered against the windshield. Izuku watched the rain streak the glass. It distorted the city lights, turning Tokyo into a blur of neon and gray. When they arrived at the agency, the sun had fully set. It was night. Izuku changed out of his costume and into his tracksuit. He went to the break room to get water. The TV was on. Breaking news, the banner read. Izuku froze. His hand tightened around the plastic cup until it cracked. We go live to Hosu City, the anchor said. The screen filled with fire. It wasn't just a villain attack. It was a war zone. Nomu, the same creatures that had attacked the USJ, were rampaging through the streets. Cars were overturned. Buildings were burning. No. Izuku whispered. Whoa, Grip said, walking into the room. Holy crap. Are those the things from UA? Where are the heroes? Izuku asked, his voice rising in pitch. Where is Endeavor? Endeavor's agency is in Tokyo, but he might have been near. Grip trailed off. Look! That's him. On the screen, a blast of fire incinerated Enoma. Endeavor had arrived, but Izuku wasn't looking at the fire. He was looking at the map of Hosa displayed in the corner of the screen. The attack was centered in the commercial district, but the hero killer, Stain, didn't operate in commercial districts. He operated in the shadows. In the quiet, lonely places where heroes patrolled alone. Manuel's agency was in Hosu. Normal hero Manuel. If the Nomu were attacking the city center, the heroes would flock there. All the attention would be drawn to the fire, which meant the alleys would be empty. The perfect hunting ground. Ida, Izuku breathed. He pulled out his phone. He dialed. Voicemail. He dialed again. Voicemail. Pick up, pick up, pick up. Izuku yelled at the phone. Midoriya? Death Arms stood in the doorway, his face serious. What's wrong, my friend? Izuku stammered, turning to his mentor. He's there. He's looking for the hero killer. I know it. He's going to get himself killed. Death Arms frowned. That's a heavy accusation, kid. The hero killer? Why would a student go after him? Because Stain hurt his brother. Izuku shouted. He's not thinking straight. I have to go. He took a step toward the door. Death Arms stepped in front of him, his massive bulk blocking the exit. Whoa, hold your horses, Death Arms said, his voice stern. You're an intern. You're my responsibility. I can't let you run off to a different city in the middle of a crisis. That's vigilantism. That's suicide. But he's going to die. Izuku pleaded. Tears were pricking the corners of his eyes. If no one finds him, if everyone is fighting the Nomu, he's going to be alone. The pros and hosts will handle it, Death Arms said firmly. Endeavor is there. Manuel is there. You don't understand. Izuku gripped his own arms. Stain paralyzes people. If Ida finds him, he won't be able to run. He needs help. And what are you going to do? Death Arms asked, his voice dropping an octave. You can't even use your quirk without breaking your bones, Midoriya. You go there, you throw one punch, and you're a liability. You're just another body for the pros to save. The words hit Izuku like a sledgehammer. You're just another body for the pros to save. It was true. He had no full calling. He had no control. If he went there, he would be a glass cannon. He might save Ida for a second, but then he would be broken, helpless. Izuku choked. Stay here, Death Arms commanded. I'm going to call the association. I'll flag Manuel's agency. I'll make sure they know to look for your friend. But you stay put. That is an order. Death Arms walked out of the room, phone to his ear. Izuku stood alone in the break room. The TV flickered with images of destruction. He looked at his hands. They were shaking violently now. In another world, he was already on a train. In another world, he was already moving, but in this world, he was paralyzed by his own choices. He had chosen safety. He had chosen to be a vessel. And now, that vessel was anchored in Tokyo, while his friend was walking into the mouth of a shark. He sank to the floor, the sounds of the news report washing over him. Please, he prayed to a universe that wasn't listening. Please let someone find him. But as the minutes ticked by, and the chaos in Hosa escalated, Izuku Midoriya realized with a sickening clarity, no one was coming. Ida was on his own, and it was Izuku's fault. The heavy lifting had only just begun, but the weight was no longer concrete. It was guilt. Pure, crushing guilt. The rain in Tokyo was cold, but the rain in Hosu was boiling. Izuku Midoriya stood in the break room of the Death Arms agency, his face inches from the television screen. The broadcast signal was choppy, interfered with by the smoke and the electromagnetic disruption of the ongoing quirks, but the image was clear enough to stop his heart. Fire. Screams. Monsters. It's a coordinated attack, Death Arms said, stepping into the room. He had just gotten off the phone with the Hero Public Safety Commission. His face was grim, stripped of its usual boisterous confidence. 3 Noma. Multiple fires in the shopping district. The local pros are overwhelmed. And Ida? Izuku asked, his voice cracking. Did they find him? Did Manuel report in? Death Arms shook his head slowly. Manuel isn't answering the dispatch hails. He's likely in combat. Midoriya, you have to understand, the lines are jammed. It's a war zone down there. Izuku gripped the edge of the table. His knuckles were white. He's not in the shopping district. I know him. He's looking for the hero killer. He's in the back streets. That's enough, Death Arms snapped, though not unkindly. You are speculating. You are projecting your fears. Even if he is there, what can you do? Teleport? You are 400 kilometers away. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. 400 kilometers. It might as well have been a different planet. Izuku looked down at his phone. The screen was dark. No messages. If I were there. The thought was a parasite, eating him from the inside out. If I had accepted Gran Torino's offer, his agency is in Kofu, but he moves around. He travels fast. We might have been on the bullet train, we might have been passing through, but he wasn't passing through. He was standing in a safe, dry room in Tokyo, having spent the day moving concrete blocks. I need air, Izuku choked out. He walked out the back door into the alleyway behind the agency. The Tokyo rain soaked his tracksuit instantly. He looked up at the black sky, invisible behind the light pollution and the storm clouds. He closed his eyes and tried to reach out with his mind, as if wishing hard enough could bridge the physical distance. Please, Ida. Don't be stupid. Please be a hero. Hosa City. 8:15 p.m. Tenya Ida was not being a hero. He was a weapon, forged in grief and sharpened by rage. He ran through the labyrinthine alleys of the Hosu commercial district. To his left, the sky glowed orange from the fires unleashed by the Noma. He could hear the roar of endeavor, the screams of civilians, the crashing of cars. He ignored them all. A hero would have turned toward the screams. A hero would have prioritized evacuation. But Ida had shed the skin of a hero the moment he saw his brother in that hospital bed, broken and bandaged, his career stolen by a man who claimed to judge worthiness. Ingenium is done, Tensei had whispered. No, Ida thought, the engine in his calves roaring as he took a corner at breakneck speed. Ingenium is not done. I am Ingenium now. And I will purge the man who did this. He scanned every shadow. He checked every dead end. The hero killer's pattern was specific. He attacked in blind spots. He attacked where the light of society didn't reach. And then, he heard it. It wasn't a scream. It was a gurgle. The wet, choking sound of someone trying to breathe through blood. Ida skid to a halt, his boots scraping against the wet pavement. He turned slowly toward a narrow gap between 2 office buildings. The alley was dark, illuminated only by the flickering light of a dying neon sign reflecting off a puddle. There were 2 figures. One was slumped against the wall, dressed in a hero costume that looked like Native American garb. Pro-hero native. He was clutching his shoulder, blood pouring between his fingers. He tried to speak, but his body was rigid, paralyzed. The other figure stood over him. He was a nightmare made flesh. A tattered red scarf, stained with old blood, floated in the wind. He wore a bandolier of knives. His eyes were hidden behind a mask, but the aura of bloodlust was palpable. He held a jagged katana, the tip resting against Native's throat. The hero killer, Stain. Ida felt the world narrow down to a single point. The sounds of the Nomu attack faded into a dull buzz. The rain seemed to stop. All that existed was him, and the monster. Found you, Ida whispered. Stain turned his head slightly. His eyes, bloodshot and manic, locked onto Ida. He didn't look surprised. He looked bored. A child? Stain rasped. His voice sounded like grinding stones. Run along. This is a place for the cleansing. Not for sightseeing. Ida stepped into the light. The engines on his legs purred, exhaust venting steam into the cold air. He raised his chin, trying to mimic the stoic posture of his brother. I am not sightseeing, Ida announced, his voice trembling with suppressed fury. I have been searching for you. You are the one who attacked my brother. You are the one who hurt Ingenium. Stain turned fully now. He stepped away from Native, leaving the pro-hero gasping on the ground. Ingenium, Stain muttered, searching his memory. Ah. The speedster. He was weak. He cared more about the appearance of heroism than the act itself. He survived, didn't he? Consider it a mercy. I let him live to spread the word. Mercy? Ida's vision went red. You crippled him. You stole his dream. And for that, I will end you. Ida didn't wait. He didn't assess the situation. He didn't notice that Native was trying to warn him with his eyes. He kicked off the ground. Recipro burst. He was fast. Faster than he had ever been in the sports festival. Grief was a potent fuel. He closed the distance in a fraction of a second, his leg coming around for a high-speed kick aimed directly at Stain's head. Die! Stain didn't blink. He simply shifted his weight. It was a movement so subtle it was almost invisible. He ducked under the kick, the wind of Ida's attack ruffling his scarf. Too slow, Stain whispered. As Ida's leg passed harmlessly over him, Stain drew a small dagger from his belt. In one fluid motion, he slashed upward. SHK. It wasn't a deep cut. Just a graze across Ida's arm where the armor had gaps. A warning shot. Ida tumbled, using his momentum to roll and recover. He spun around, adrenaline masking the sting of the cut. I'm not done! Ida shouted. I will. Stain licked the blade. The effect was instantaneous. Ida's body seized. His legs, mid-step, locked up. His arms fell to his sides. He crashed to the pavement face first, the impact jarring his teeth. What? Ida gasped. He tried to move. He sent the signal from his brain to his legs. Move! Stand up! Kick him! Nothing happened. It was as if his body had been disconnected from his mind. Disappointing, Stain said, walking slowly toward him. The sound of his heavy boots splashing in the puddles echoed like a funeral drum. Stain stopped and looked down at Ida. The look in his eyes wasn't anger. It was pity. And that was worse. You called yourself a hero, Stain said quietly. But look at you. You saw a pro-hero bleeding out on the ground. You saw life in danger. And what was your first thought? Was it I must save him? Was it I must call for help? Stain crouched down, bringing his face close to Ida's. No, Stain hissed. Your first thought was I will end you. You didn't come here to save anyone. You came here to satisfy your own ego. Your own vengeance. Stain stood up and pointed his sword at Ida's face. You are the furthest thing from a hero. You are a counterfeit. And counterfeits must be purged. Hosa's city center. 8:20 p.m. Shoto Todoroki unleashed a wave of ice, freezing a Noma mid-swing. The creature, a massive beast with 4 arms, groaned as the ice encased its limbs. Don't let up! Endeavor shouted, his beard of flames roaring. Aim for the head! Their regeneration is biological, not magical. Carbonize the cells. Endeavor launched a spear of white-hot fire, piercing the Noma's brain. The creature shrieked and fell silent. Todoroki panted, his breath visible in the cold air radiating from his right side. He looked around. The street was a disaster. Cars were crushed. Civilians were huddled in the wreckage of a convenience store. Shoto! Endeavor barked. Secure the perimeter. I'm going to assist the other pros with the winged one. Right, Todoroki said. He pulled out his phone. He had a nagging feeling. A strange sensation that he was forgetting something. He checked the screen. Midoriya, guys. Turn on the news. HOSU is under attack. Todoroki, I'm here. That was it. The conversation had ended there. Todoroki frowned. Midoriya was smart. If he knew something, he would say it. If he was in trouble, he would ask for help. He's in Tokyo, Todoroki reasoned. He's just watching the news. He's worried. In another timeline, a simple location pin, sent by a desperate Izuku lying in an alleyway, would have been enough. Todoroki would have looked at that pin, realized it was far away from the evacuation zone, and connected the dots instantly. Midoriya doesn't send blank messages unless he's in trouble. But there was no pin. There was no distress signal. Hey! Kid! A police officer waved at him. We need an ice wall here. The fire is spreading to the residential block. Todoroki looked at his phone one last time. He thought of Ida. Ida is with Manuel. Manuel is a pro. They're probably evacuating people on the north side. Coming, Todoroki said. He slid his phone into his pocket and ran toward the fire. He turned left. If he had turned right and run for 10 minutes, he might have heard the screams. But he turned left. The alleyway? 8:25 p.m. Please, Native croaked from the wall. Stop, he's just a kid. Stain ignored him. He was focused on Ida. Ida was lying on his side, rain and mud smearing his glasses. He was crying. Not from pain, but from the shattering of his worldview. He's right, Ida thought, the realization crushing him. I didn't even look at Native. I didn't care. I just wanted to kill him. I'm not a hero. I'm nothing. You realize it now, don't you? Stain said softly. He held the katana with a loose grip. Self-awareness is the first step. But for some, it comes too late. Stain raised the sword. Stop! A figure burst into the alleyway. It wasn't a green blur of lightning. It was a man in a white and blue costume with water dispensers on his arms. Manuel. He was panting, his helmet slightly askew. He had been searching for Ida ever since the attack started, abandoning the fight with the Nomu to find his wayward intern. Get away from him! Manuel shouted. He aimed his arms and fired a high-pressure water cutter. Stain sighed. He deflected the water blast with a lazy swing of his sword. Another one, Stain muttered. You are the pro in charge of this child? Ida? Manuel screamed, ignoring Stain. Get up! Run! I can't. Ida sobbed. Manuel gritted his teeth. He wasn't a combat hero. His quirk was for firefighting and disaster relief. He wasn't built to fight the hero killer. But he stood his ground. You let a child wander into a war zone consumed by vengeance, Stain lectured, stepping over Ida's paralyzed body. You failed to teach him the essence of heroism. You are responsible for his corruption. Stain moved. He was a blur of red and steel. Manuel tried to create a water shield, but Stain was too fast. He slipped inside Manuel's guard, driving the hilt of his sword into the pro-hero's solar plexus. Manuel gagged, doubling over. Stain swept his legs, sending him crashing to the wet ground. Before Manuel could recover, Stain stomped on his hand, shattering the water-dispensing gauntlet. Stay down, Stain commanded. You are not my target tonight. You are merely incompetent. But Stain pointed at Native. He is a cancer. Stain walked back to Native. The pro-hero was weak from blood loss. He looked at Ida. Kid. Native whispered. Close your eyes. Ida's eyes were wide open. He couldn't close them. He was paralyzed, forced to watch. This is the reality of your world, Stain said to Ida. Watch. Watch the consequence of a society that worships false idols. Stain raised the sword high. Lightning did not strike. Ice did not freeze the blade. The sword came down. It was a wet, sickening sound. The sound of metal parting flesh and bone. Native didn't scream. He just exhaled, a long, rattling breath that ended in silence. His head slumped forward. Ida screamed. It was a raw, animalistic sound of horror. No! 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 Manuel, gasping for air on the ground, looked away, tears streaming down his face. Stain flicked the blood off his blade. He looked calm. Almost peaceful. One less fake, Stain whispered. He turned back to Ida. The paralysis was beginning to fade. Ida felt a twitch in his fingers. You, Stain said, looming over him. I should kill you. You are everything I hate. A child using his power for a selfish grudge. Stain knelt down, grabbing Ida by the collar of his armor and hauling him up. Ida's legs dragged uselessly, but Stain continued, his eyes narrowing. You have potential. Ingenium, he had potential too. He was fast. You are fast. Stain threw Ida back against the ground. Killing you now would be a waste. You need to carry this lesson. You need to be a messenger. Stain raised his sword again. But this time, he didn't aim for the neck. He aimed for the legs. A hero who cannot run is no hero at all, Stain said. If you want to be an engine, Let's see how you function when the gears are stripped. No. Please. Ida begged. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Stain didn't hesitate. He thrust the blade down, driving it through Ida's left thigh, twisting it to sever the nerve cluster. Then he ripped it out and plunged it into the right. The pain was white-hot. It was blinding. It was beyond anything Ida had ever imagined. He screamed until his throat tore. Remember this pain, Stain whispered, leaning close to Ida's ear. Remember the price of your selfishness. If you ever try to stand again, make sure it is for the right reasons, or I will come back and finish the job. Stain stood up. He sheathed his sword. Police sirens were wailing nearby. The pros were closing in. Stain looked at the carnage. Native dead. Manual beaten. Ida broken. The seed is planted, Stain muttered. He jumped. He scaled the wall of the alley in 3 bounds, disappearing onto the rooftops, melting into the night like a ghost. Death Arms Agency, Tokyo. 9 p.m. Izuku was still in the break room. He had been sitting in the dark for 45 minutes. The news anchor reappeared on the screen. She looked pale. We have an update from the situation in Hosu. Izuku leaned forward, his heart hammering against his ribs. The villain attack has been largely contained thanks to the efforts of Endeavor and the local heroes. However, we have confirmed casualties. A photo appeared on the screen. It was Native. Pro-hero Native has been found dead in an alleyway in the commercial district. Reports indicate he was a victim of the hero killer, Stain. Izuku stopped breathing. Additionally, the reporter continued, her voice shaking, 2 other individuals were found at the scene. Pro-hero Manuel, who sustained moderate injuries, and a UA student. Izuku's world went silent. Tenya Ida, acting under the hero name Ingenium. He has been rushed to Hosu General Hospital in critical condition. The cup in Izuku's hand slipped. It hit the floor, spilling water across the linoleum. Dead. Native was dead. Ida was critical. Izuku stared at his hands. The hands he had been protecting. The hands he had been saving for the future. I could have been there, he whispered. He stood up. He felt sick. He felt like throwing up. I could have been there. He screamed, kicking the chair across the room. It clattered against the wall, a hollow, useless sound. Death Arms ran into the room. Midoriya! What's going on? Izuku turned to him. His eyes were wide, filled with a mixture of grief and self-hatred that scared the pro-hero. He got him, Izuku rasped. Stain got him. Because I wasn't there. Midoriya, you can't blame yourself, Death Arms said, stepping forward. You're a student. You were doing your internship. You were where you were supposed to be. No! Izuku shouted. Tears streamed down his face. I was supposed to be there. I knew it. I knew he was in danger, and I stayed here lifting rocks because I was scared of breaking my arm. He held up his scarred hand. What good is this hand if it doesn't save anyone? Izuku cried. What good is a vessel if it's empty? He sank to his knees, sobbing. In Hosu, the rain continued to wash the blood into the gutters. In the hospital, Tenya Ida lay on a stretcher, staring at the fluorescent lights. He couldn't feel his legs. He couldn't feel anything below his waist. The engine was stalled, and somewhere in the shadows of the city, Stain watched from a rooftop. He wiped the rain from his mask. He had failed to purge the fake society tonight, but he had sent a message. And without 3 students to stop him, without the Stain defeated headline that would have rallied the heroes, Stain was free. The butterfly effect had taken hold. A single choice, Gran Torino or Death Arms, had rippled out. Izuku Midoriya had kept his bones intact, but he had broken everything else. The morning sun over Tokyo was offensively bright. It glared off the glass skyscrapers, turning the city into a blinding kaleidoscope of light that felt mocking in its cheerfulness. Izuku Midoriya sat in the common room of the Death Arms Agency. He hadn't slept. His eyes were red-rimmed, surrounded by dark bruises of exhaustion. He was wearing yesterday's clothes. On the coffee table, a cup of tea sat cold and untouched. The television was on, volume low, but every word felt like a physical blow. The news cycle had moved past the confusion of the night and settled into the grim analysis of the morning. The tragedy of Hosu. The banner read in stark black and white text. The anchor, a man with a somber expression, was speaking over a montage of images. There was the smoking crater where Endeavor had incinerated the winged gnome. There were the shattered storefronts. And then, there was the alleyway. Police tape fluttered in the wind. A chalk outline was barely visible on the wet pavement. While the pro-hero Endeavor is being hailed for his swift neutralization of the creature identified as Gnome, the victory is overshadowed by a targeted strike in the city's backstreets. The anchor said, "The hero killer, Stain, remained at large last night. And unlike previous encounters, he left a message that Hosu will not soon forget." The screen cut to a photo of Native. A black ribbon was superimposed over the corner. Pro-hero Native, confirmed deceased. A veteran of the localized tribal hero movement, he was found with fatal stab wounds. Then, the photo changed. Izuku flinched. He physically recoiled, pressing his back into the sofa cushion. It was Tenya Ida's student ID photo. He looked so serious, so determined. His glasses were straight, his jaw set. Tenya Ida, a student at UA High School, interning under the Hero Manual. Reports from Hosu General Hospital indicate he was found alongside Native. While his condition is stable, doctors have stated that the injuries to his legs are catastrophic. The hero killer, who remains at large, appears to have targeted the student specifically. Catastrophic. The word hung in the air. Midoriya. Izuku didn't look up. He couldn't. Death Arm stood in the doorway. The giant man looked smaller today. His shoulders were slumped, and he wasn't wearing his signature headband. He held a phone in his hand. I got a call from UA. Death Arm said, his voice unusually soft. From your homeroom teacher Eraserhead. He's at the hospital in Hosu. He wants you to go. Izuku looked up then. He wants me to go? Yeah. Death Arm sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. Since you're the one who flagged it. Since you're his friend. And well, Manuel is in rough shape too. Psychological shock. He blames himself. It's a mess, kid. A total mess. Izuku stood up. His legs felt like lead. He felt a phantom pain in his own shins, a sympathetic echo of what his friend must be feeling. I have to go, Izuku whispered. I have to see him. I'll drive you to the station, Death Arm said. I already cleared it. Internship suspended for the day. Just go be with your friend. The bullet train ride to Hosu was a blur. Izuku sat by the window, watching the landscape whip by. He clutched his phone, staring at the Class 1A group chat. It was chaos. Ashido, is it true? Is Ida okay? Kirishima, the news said catastrophic. What does that mean? Yaorozu, I'm trying to contact the hospital, but they won't release patient info to non-family. Uraraka, Deku-kun? Have you heard anything? You were asking about him yesterday. Todoroki. Izuku's thumb hovered over the keyboard. What could he say? I knew. I guessed. I sat in a break room and did nothing while our friend was tortured? He saw Todoroki's ellipsis. Shoto Todoroki had been there. He was in Hosu. Izuku tapped on a private message to Todoroki. Midoriya, Todoroki-kun. I'm on my way to the hospital. The reply was instant. Todoroki, I'm already here. My father is debriefing with the police chief. I'm in the waiting room. Todoroki, Midoriya. I didn't know. I was fighting the Nomu. I didn't check the alleys. Izuku felt a wave of nausea. It wasn't Todoroki's fault. Todoroki had done his job. He had saved civilians from a rampaging monster. The only reason Todoroki would have gone to the alley was if someone had told him to. If someone had sent a location. If Izuku had been there. In a cruel twist of irony, Izuku's safety, his decision to preserve his bones, had cost Ida his. Hosu General Hospital smelled of antiseptic and rain. The lobby was crowded with reporters, police officers, and citizens injured in the Nomu attack. Izuku pushed through the crowd, flashing his student ID at the nurse's station. I'm here for Tenya Ida, he said, his voice trembling. I'm his classmate. Eraserhead sent for me. The nurse looked tired. She glanced at his ID, then nodded. 4th floor. Surgical recovery. Room 402. The elevator ride felt like it took a year. When the doors opened, the atmosphere changed. It was quieter here. heavier. Down the hall, Izuku saw a familiar figure leaning against the wall. It was Aizawa-sensei. He was still wearing his bandages from the USJ attack, looking more like a mummy than a teacher. Next to him stood Todoroki, looking at the floor, his mismatched eyes dull and clouded, and sitting on a bench, head in his hands, was the pro-hero manual. He was still in his costume, but the helmet was gone. He was weeping silently. "Sensei," Izuku croaked. Aizawa looked up. His visible eye was bloodshot. "Midoriya, you made it. How is he?" Izuku asked, walking closer. He felt like an intruder. Aizawa sighed, a long, ragged sound. "He's awake. The doctors, they did what they could." "The news said catastrophic?" Izuku pressed. "What does that mean?" Manuel let out a sob. "It means I failed him. I failed him." Aizawa put a hand on Manuel's shoulder, silencing him, then turned back to Izuku. "Stain, he was precise. He didn't just stab Ida. He targeted the femoral nerve clusters and the major tendons in both quadriceps." Izuku's breath hitched. He knew anatomy. He had studied it to understand one for all. "Stain severed the connection," Aizawa said bluntly. "The engines are intact mechanically. But Ida can't trigger them. He can't feel his legs from the waist down. The damage is permanent. He will likely never walk without assistance again. And he will certainly never run." The world tilted. Never run. Ida, whose entire identity, whose entire family legacy, was built on speed. The boy who scolded them for putting feet on desks. The boy who ran to fetch the teachers during the USJ alarm. Grounded. Forever. "Can't Recovery Girl fix it?" Izuku asked desperately. "If we get him back to UA, Recovery Girl accelerates natural healing." Aizawa cut him off. "She can mend broken bones. She can close wounds. But she cannot regenerate severed nerve tissue that has been destroyed. Not to this extent." "It's gone, Midoriya." Izuku looked at the closed door of room 402. It looked like a tomb. "Todoroki-kun," Izuku whispered. Todoroki looked up. "I was 2 streets away," he said flatly. "I was freezing a Nomu. I thought Manuel was with him. I thought he was safe." "We all thought he was safe," Aizawa said. "That's the problem. We assumed. And Stain took advantage of that assumption." Aizawa stepped aside. "He's asking for you, Midoriya. He won't speak to the doctors. He won't speak to Manuel. But he asked if you were here." Izuku swallowed the lump in his throat. "Okay. I'll go." He reached for the door handle. His hand shook so badly he rattled the latch. He took a deep breath, steadied his hand, and pushed the door open. The room was dim. The blinds were drawn. Tenya Ida lay in the bed. His legs were encased in thick, heavy casts, elevated on a sling. Several 4 lines ran into his arms. He wasn't wearing his glasses. Without them, he looked younger. Smaller. He was staring at the ceiling tiles, his expression completely blank. "Ida-kun?" Izuku whispered. Ida didn't blink. "Midoriya-kun. You came." His voice was hoarse. Izuku walked to the side of the bed. He grabbed a chair and sat down. He wanted to reach out and take Ida's hand, but he was afraid Ida would pull away. "Of course I came," Izuku said. I was so worried." "You knew," Ida said. It wasn't an accusation. It was a statement of fact. Izuku stammered. "I guessed. When you didn't answer, and the location. I called you so many times." "I saw the calls," Ida said softly. "Before I found him. I saw your name on the screen. And I ignored it." A tear leaked from the corner of Ida's eye, tracking down his temple into his hair. "I ignored you because I didn't want you to stop me," Ida whispered. "I didn't want to hear reason. I wanted blood." "Ida, it's not your fault," Izuku said, the standard comfort tumbling out of his mouth. "Stain is a monster." He was right," Ida interrupted. The room went cold. Izuku froze. "What?" Ida turned his head slowly to look at Izuku. His eyes were hollow pits of despair. "Stain was right," Ida repeated. "Native was dying right in front of me. He was bleeding out on the pavement. And I didn't even look at him. I didn't ask if he was okay. I didn't try to carry him to safety. I just looked at Stain. I just wanted to satisfy my own anger. Ida's voice broke. I called myself Ingenium. I wore my brother's name. But I dragged it through the mud. A hero saves people, Midoriya. I didn't go there to save anyone. I went there to murder a man, but you didn't deserve this. Izuku cried, gesturing to the casts. Nobody deserves this. He tortured you, he taught me, Ida whispered. He told me that a fake hero has no right to stand. And he made sure I never would again. Ida looked down at his legs. I can't feel them, Midoriya. It's just nothing. It's like they aren't even there. The engines, they're just dead metal now. He began to sob. It was a quiet, horrible sound. I'm sorry, Ida wept. I'm so sorry. To my brother. To you. To everyone. I was so foolish. Izuku couldn't hold it back anymore. The dam broke. Tears exploded from his eyes. I'm sorry too, Izuku wailed. I should have been there. I should have chosen Gran Torino. If I had been there, I could have found you. I could have pinged Todoroki. We could have fought him together. Ida looked at him, confusion dawning through the grief. Gran Torino? Why? Because I was scared, Izuku confessed, clutching his chest. I chose Death Arms because I didn't want to get hurt. I wanted to play it safe. I wanted to protect my body. And because I was safe, you got hurt. I traded your legs for my arms. It was an irrational leap of logic, born of survivor's guilt, but to Izuku, it felt like absolute truth. The butterfly effect. His safety had been purchased with Ida's tragedy. Midoriya. Ida reached out, his hand trembling. He placed it on Izuku's arm. Don't, Ida said. Don't take this from me. This was my choice. My mistake. If you had been there, he might have killed you too. Stain, he was a demon. He let me live to be a warning. Ida squeezed Izuku's arm. He told me to tell the others. To tell the fakes that he is watching. He left me alive to spread fear. Ida looked back at the ceiling. My career is over, Midoriya. Ingenium is dead. The line ends with me. Izuku sat there, weeping, as the rain drummed against the hospital window. He looked at his own hands, strong, unscarred, functional. He hated them. Somewhere in the Kamino ward, the bar was dimly lit, smelling of alcohol and mold. Tamura Shigaraki scratched at his neck, the sound dry and irritating. He was watching the news on a small television set on the counter. Stain, stain, stain! Shigaraki hissed, disintegrating the remote control in his hand. Dust drifted to the floor. It's all about him. The Nomu destroyed half the city. We caused millions in damage, but all anyone can talk about is the hero killer and his message. Kurojiri polished a glass, his yellow eyes narrowing. It is unexpected. But not entirely unfavorable, Tamura Shigaraki. How is this favorable? Shigaraki spat. He stole my spotlight. He showed up, killed a pro, crippled a UA student, and vanished. He made the Nomu look like mindless pets. Precisely, Kurojiri said calm. But look at the internet. Kurojiri turned a tablet around. It was a forum. The thread was titled, Stain was right. User 1, did you see? He took out Ingenium's brother, and now the kid? He's actually purging the corrupt ones. User 2, heroes these days just want sponsorship deals. Stain is the only one with conviction. User 3, where is he? I want to join him. The video of his speech, the one from the alleyway security camera, is going viral. Kurojiri explained. His ideology is spreading like a virus. And since the heroes failed to capture him, since he escaped into the night, he has become a legend. An untouchable wraith. Shigaraki stopped scratching. He stared at the screen. They want to join him? They are looking for a banner to rally behind, Kurojiri said. Stain is that banner. But Stain is a lone wolf. He has no resources. We, however, Shigaraki's lips curled into a twisted smile beneath the hand covering his face. We have the resources. Shigaraki finished. If they come looking for Stain, they'll find the League of Villains, correct? Kurojiri said. His victory is our recruitment drive. The chaos he sowed, we will harvest it. Shigaraki laughed. It was a cold, dry sound. Fine. Let the trash worship their martyr. I'll use them all. I'll use Stain's shadow to destroy All Might. 2 days later, the atmosphere at UA High School was suffocating. When Class 1A returned from their internships, there was no chatter. No comparing notes. No showing off new moves. Ida's desk was empty. It sat there in the middle of the room, a void that sucked the energy out of everyone. Mineta was quiet. Bakugo was staring out the window, his usual scowl deepened into something darker. Uraraka's eyes were puffy. Izuku sat at his desk, staring at his notebook. He had returned to Death Arms for the remainder of the week, but the internship had changed. Death Arms didn't know how to handle him. They didn't do PR anymore. Izuku just worked out. He lifted weights until his muscles failed. He ran on the treadmill until he vomited. He punished his body, trying to exorcise the guilt through physical exhaustion, but it didn't work. Morning, Aizawa mumbled, entering the room. He looked even more tired than usual. The class sat up straighter, but the silence remained. As you know, Aizawa started, his voice flat. Ida will not be returning to class for the foreseeable future. He is undergoing physical therapy and counseling. Aizawa scanned the room. The hero killer is still at large. The police are conducting a nationwide manhunt. But until he is caught, the streets are different. The atmosphere has changed. He looked directly at Izuku. You all saw the reality of our world. It isn't a game. It isn't a sport. One mistake, one moment of hesitation, or one moment of arrogance, and it's over. Aizawa turned to the board. We are moving up the training schedule. The summer camp is approaching. You need to get stronger. Not just to pass exams, but to survive. Survive. Izuku looked down at his right hand. He clenched it into a fist. He thought of Ada in that hospital bed. The engine that would never run again. I have to carry him, Izuku thought. I have to be fast enough for both of us.